Very good to see you. We have a couple items on the agenda, very timely matters on the agenda. I want to first just thank our cabinet, all the community boards, in your partnership for our coat drive. It is getting pretty brick. It's pretty chilly out here, and so I want to thank you in advance for helping to facilitate all the donations of brand new coats for folks who will likely need it very, very soon. So today we'll talk about our snow removal plan for the city of New York, as well as an addendum or a continuation of a discussion we had about a month ago on mediation for neighborhood disputes and such. But first, we've got the Department of Sanitation joining us this morning. Our Assistant Chief Roger Leahy of Queens East and Assistant Chief Iggy Azara of Queens West, neither of whom are strangers to our cabinet and our borough, of course. And also Henry Earhart, Director of Community Affairs of the Department of Sanitation, as well as I see Nicholas Sercharo, Assistant Director of Community Affairs. I don't think the department needs any further introduction. We know what they do. They are essential. We're very grateful for everything that they do, especially with such even further limited resources. But we realize more that we need them in our time, or how valuable they are in our time of need. So without further ado, Chiefs Leahy and Azara and Mr. Earhart, welcome. The floor is yours.
All right, great. Thank you so much for having us here today. We're happy to go through the snow plan like we do every year. Most of this information, I'm sure to everybody here has become common knowledge since I've been here. We've been doing this presentation every year, so we're happy to go through it again. There's a little bit of new information, but we'll take it through quick and then we'll open the floor to any questions that everybody might have. So I'm just going to share my screen so we could all see the PowerPoint, and we'll just save all the questions for the end. Okay. Okay, can everybody can see that okay, I'm assuming? All right. So this is, I'm sure this looks familiar. This is actually a video that we typically play. We've played it the past few years, I believe. Let's see how this, make sure everybody has the audio. You can find this on our YouTube page. So if anybody,
Nick, I don't hear any audio.
it might be something with the sharing of the screen, but if you can hear the audio, it's fine. You can find that on our YouTube page, and it's just a quick little 2-minute video about basically the most basic information distilled from this presentation. So sorry I couldn't hear the audio. That sometimes happens with Zoom screen sharing, but we'll just move on. We don't need to. So I always like to start these presentations with just a look at how far we've come. This is a snow emergency plan from some time ago in 1979, 1980. When we used to have the arterial, primary, secondary, and tertiary format for snow clearing. Now we have sectoring, but I always like to point out the tertiary streets, the clearing time that was public was 3 to 6 days. Now, obviously, that would be completely unacceptable. We've come a long way, and typically, 24 hours after everybody's been cleared. But I just like to start with that and show how far the department has come in terms of snow removal. So our preseason budget is a little over $101 million this year. We started night plow a little bit earlier. We started October 26th, and this is kind of a result of the earlier storm we saw in November last year. So if for those who are unfamiliar, we actually sent an email out to all the community boards and elected officials emails regarding what night plow is. So night plow is when we have manpower staggered on all 3 shifts. So during the winter season, if in case there's a winter weather alert that comes in, we don't have to have all of the personnel come into the garage at the same time. We keep an even amount, a fairly even amount on all 3 shifts. So some folks might notice that that actually changes their collection time because we have more personnel on different shifts. So some people might be changed to night collection. We have been doing more collection on nights anyway as a result of COVID and trying to social distance our workforce. So some folks might actually not see a change, but it's just something to keep in mind in case constituents reach out and say, you know, my garbage is usually picked up at 9, now it's picked up later. It could be because of night plow. And I'm sure you've also seen some of our trucks driving around on Sundays, getting used to the routes, making sure nothing has changed in the streetscape. And this year, we have a little bit of a new challenge with some of the outdoor dining spaces. So we're making sure that our workers and those that are going to be on the trucks driving their routes during snow, that we are identifying any potential issues with outdoor dining spaces. So I'm sure as everybody here has gotten, once we our 3 weather reporting systems are predicting snow, we'll issue a snow alert to the media, to the community boards, to elected officials, all of our contacts. And once the snow forecast is more than 2 inches, we'll begin 12-hour shifts. So everybody in the agency will be 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. and 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. Our salt spreaders will go out at the first sign of snow, but not our plows. Our plows will only begin plowing operations when 2 inches have hit because there's a little bit of a lift, as the video had mentioned. Last year, we piloted a few brine trucks in each borough. So the brine trucks were basically a liquid solution of effectively the exact rock salt that we have in liquid form, calcium chloride and rock salt. And we use that to pre-treat areas ahead of snowstorms. We're going to be continuing to do that again this year. We have some steep streets in areas where brine is more effective than rock salt. So we're going to be using brine trucks again this year. Like I just mentioned, once we get over 2 inches, we begin plow operations. The plows are fixed to the right to avoid oncoming traffic and turning lane blockages. And one thing that residents, you know, they call 311 and they want any sort of non-plow addressed while we're actually plowing. So our plows operate continuously on their routes. So while it's actually still snowing, 311s are temporarily suspended. We use that information for real-time knowledge on our end and awareness of situational awareness of what's going on. So residents should still call 311, but our plows just operate continuously on their route nonstop until the shift is over. So if a resident said they haven't been there yet, the plow is going to get there, but it won't divert to address a single 311 complaint while it's still snowing. So us and DOT have snow laborers. Everybody here should have gotten our email that we sent out a few weeks ago about snow laborer recruitment. We'd be happy to share it again to anybody who doesn't have it. We use these snow laborers to assist with some of the pedestrian infrastructure, in addition to the smaller Holster trucks and the skid steers, which are like little bobcats to handle bus stops and crosswalks. We really ask business owners and homeowners that have corner properties to assist us with the crosswalks and clearing fire hydrants. As you know, there's tens of thousands of crosswalk ramps and fire hydrants. It's nearly impossible for any one entity to do it alone. So we really ask residents to help us when they can, or business owners for that matter. Now this year it's a little bit new. We have a little bit of a new situation with outdoor dining in the roadway. So we've been working with DOT and SBS, and we've been on calls with the mayor's office just around the expectations for outdoor dining. So like I mentioned before, we had our personnel go out and as they're doing their practice runs, sort of make note of any of the businesses that might have more permanent structures that couldn't easily be moved in a large storm, that might be a little larger than the footprint they're supposed to be, which is 8 feet, and any sort of other areas where it might be possible that our snow plow isn't able to fit down the street. We just want business owners, to be aware that, during snow operations, we're still going to clear the snow. Our plows are still affixed to the right, and we want to make sure that they protect their structures and that we can safely clear a pathway for cars to be driving. Recently, I think it was yesterday or the day before, DOT issued some new guidelines for participants in the open restaurants program. So if we have an active snow alert, diners cannot sit in the roadway. And if there's a snowstorm forecast of over 12 inches or more, they are asked to remove or consolidate their roadway setups to as small of a footprint as possible. They also have these little sort of like these little flags to sort of cite their roadway setups for us, visibility sticks they call them. So, but really, we just want to make sure if we have a forecast of 12 inches or more, or even a little bit less than that, we want business owners and those that we know they're struggling during this time, and we really want them to just sort of protect the investments they made, because at the end of the day, we still have to conduct plow operations, and we're still going to be especially for those businesses that are on the right side of the street. We want to make sure that there's no damage happening. So if they could remove or consolidate their roadway dining as much as possible, it would really help us in our snow operations. Once we finish our clearing, we start or our plowing, we transition to clearing. We've got snow melters at every key locations. In our snow plans, our final snow plans that are posted on our website, you could find the snow melter locations in every borough. Here's just a few pictures of our snow equipment. We've got the salt spreaders, the Holster, which are the smaller trucks that fit on narrower, hillier streets, plowable truck, front end loader, skid steer, and our melters. Salt, we've got a lot of it. We've got over 300,000 tons of salt on hand. It is still our most effective ice melter and snow pre-treatment. And we have all of our salt locations, 31 permanent and 11 seasonal, all throughout the city. So this is what I mentioned earlier about our new routes. I'm sure all of you are familiar with this at this point. It's not new to this year, but if you're not familiar, a few years ago, we changed over from our primary, tertiary, secondary routes to our critical and sector routes. So critical routes are those highways, major thoroughfares where the NYPD, emergency services, hospitals, and sector is everything else. So this system, instead of going down from primary, secondary to tertiary, all of these routes operate continuously at the same time. It helped us to redesign our routes where there's minimal overlap and redundancies, and make it so there's no real prioritization other than the fact that we'll use some more equipment on the critical routes to make sure those are clear a little bit faster. But all the routes operate continuously. So if anybody asks, you know, my street's on every street is accounted for. So if you're on a dead end or you're on a smaller street, once we start plowing, the routes begin immediately for all those streets. We also installed a new Magellan turn-by-turn navigation with everybody's routes programmed into it. So everybody knows where the route before had stopped on the previous shift, where they need to pick it up, and they know exactly what route they're going on. This is just a look at our command center. We've got, you know, a ton of cameras. We're monitoring Plow NYC, 311. And like I said earlier, we might not divert trucks to address 311 complaints while it's happening during snow, while the snow is still coming down, but we do use it for situational awareness, and we can notice if there's an uptick in 311 complaints in one area, there might be a down truck, there might be a stuck car, and it's something that we can help rectify quickly and continue with our snow operations, but we need to know that information. I'm sure everyone's familiar with Plow NYC. You can go on the website while it's happening. It's updated every 15 minutes, nyc.gov/plow-nyc. You can see whether a street is a private street, whether it's primary, or whether it's critical or sector, and then the color coded as to what time it was last plowed. It'll give you down to the minute. This is residents and property owners' responsibilities in terms of clearing clearing snow after the sidewalk after the snowstorm has ended. So if it ends between 5 p.m. and 8:59, they have 14 hours to clear. And if it ends between 9 p.m. and 6:59 a.m., they have to clear by 11 a.m. the next day. Our enforcement folks aren't going to be out there, you know, waiting for the 1 minute to start hitting people with tickets, but it does become a public safety concern, as I'm sure all the district managers have seen, bad actors who don't clear, and then you've got icy sidewalks and you've got elderly or disabled walking around in the community, and it becomes a risk for pretty much even for anyone to be slipping and falling. So again, we just really like to reiterate, if you have a complaint, just please, you guys can reach out to us directly. You have the direct lines to our office, to Henry and I, to the deputy chief, to the borough chiefs. I'm sure you have direct lines to the superintendents. But for constituents, please just remind them to call 311. We really use that information, especially after with our post-storm reports and looking back, and during the storm as well. It's really important for us to see where those hotspots are, what's going on, and figure out how we can improve our operations. So if there are issues during the snowstorm, that stuff doesn't happen. It's just great data for us to have, and it's good to have in real time. So if you could just push constituents to call 301, if there's a larger issue, reach out to Henry or I, and we'd be happy to make sure we coordinate resolving that issue during the storm. So that is our PowerPoint. I'm gonna stop the screen share, and we'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have regarding the upcoming snow season.
Thank you, Mr. Earhart, Mr. Sercharo, excuse me, for that presentation. I feel terribly for the restaurant owners. That's a lot. That's a lot on them. That's a lot on them. Any questions or comments from our cabinet? I see District Manager Coloris of Board 1.
Hi, I've been asking the same question from basically DOT, Buildings Department, and now you. In Community Board 1's boundaries, we have a lot of the restaurants that are building out what looks like bungalows out of plywood and windows, and they're rather elaborate building structures. You're saying some of them bigger than, I believe you said 8 feet, and a lot of them in my territory are. how are these semi-permanent structures going to be handled? Because I don't see any financial or physical way of them resituating these new style street structures. What is DSNY going to do? And are you going to push the snow up against the structure in that type of a situation? How is that going to be handled?
Well, we are very sensitive to the businesses. We know that they've been going through a lot during COVID, and we understand that they invested money and time and effort into building some of these structures. In terms of larger than 8 feet, I believe the DOT restriction or the open restaurant program had said their footprint can only be 8 feet, which doesn't pose a risk for us in terms of removing snow and actually blocking the street. If it was 8 feet or under, our plow can fit easily down the street, but we know people took advantage. We've seen it. People took advantage of that and made it more like 9 feet or 10 feet, which poses issues for us in terms of actually fitting a truck with a plow down that street. But really for us, our plows are fixed. It's not something that we can actually change real time during a storm if there's an open structure, if there's an open restaurant there. So our messaging, and we've been working with multiple agencies on this, has been that you should plan and prepare and sort of use common sense when there's going to be a potential large storm. We're going to plow the street. It is going to be fixed to the right. And if your structure is on the right, you should take some extra precautions in making sure to protect it, whether that's breaking it down, bringing it into storage, bringing it into the restaurant if you can. But that's really what our messaging has been to some of these restaurants that we've seen and working with DOT, that we're going to clear the snow. It needs to happen for everybody to get to work if they still are going in for our essential services to be working on safe streets, and they should sort of protect their investment in making sure that they can, again, make the footprint as small as possible for us to clear efficiently.
And ultimately, it's DOT that would enforce those rules on what size it needs to be. So if there are any really out of gross proportion, you should let DOT know. DOT is also, we understand, making sandbags available and some other things to the restaurants. And I'll defer to, Chief Azara. They've been looking at particular conditions out in Queens West, but ultimately we do have to plow the streets and get them open for potential emergency vehicles, food delivery vehicles, and things like that. Chief, you wanna add anything?
Mr. Earhart, I think you have a visitor. I hear your doorbell.
Good morning. This is Chief Azara. Just to piggyback a bit on what Henry said, we are well aware of any issues that we have currently, and we are working with the DOT, and the district is definitely has a plan to mitigate any of these situations. But like Nick said, common sense does apply. We know exactly where our problems lie, and we are going to do the best we can to ensure that public safety is not compromised in any way.
Thank you. I see District Manager Markel of Board 2, followed by District Manager Marziliano of Board 11.
Hey, good morning. Thank you for presenting sanitation. This is always a good presentation. Again, I have a question every year. Bike lanes. Sorry to bring up the subject, but many people are interested how we're going to plow them. I think you now have special of the smaller machines, I see holsters that I understand are the ones that are going to do the plow. Do you have a special separate plan for the bike lanes, or it's all included? And how many machines do you have? And does it go out with the full snow plan, or is it a separate plan?
So in the snow plan, you can see how many skid steers and haulsters are assigned to each district. But the bike lanes are cleared after after the roadway is finished being cleared. So once we finish the roadway operation, then you transition to pedestrian infrastructure, which includes the bike lanes.
Now, are the corners going to be cleared before the bike lanes? We have a lot of seniors in the district, and it's very important for them to be able to cross the streets. What is the order of the snow plan in terms of the roads and the clearing of the pedestrian area and just the order of the plan?
So that's one of the things that we hire the temporary snow laborers for, is to clear the crosswalks. Obviously, that's done on a priority basis, and we're focusing on critical areas, main streets, things like that first. But that, bike lanes, pedestrian infrastructure, all begins after the roadways are cleared. And some personnel and equipment are freed up to address those kinds of conditions. So the handwork is largely done by the temporary snow laborers. We began the registration process for temporary snow laborers in mid-October. They go online, they make an appointment to come to the nearest district to them, where we do the actual registration. And then when needed, we call them up and get them working. We've also been talking to the business improvement districts, and a lot of them are out and take care of the crosswalks and fire hydrants and things like that in their bid areas, and that's extremely helpful. Specifics on that, Chief can give you in terms of Queens West priorities and things like that, but that's generally how it works.
Thank you. Thanks, Henry.
District Manager Marziliano of Board 3, followed by District Manager Reddick of Board 12. I'm sorry, Marziliano of 11 and 12.
It's okay. I'll take Jackson Heights too. Good morning, everybody. It's good to see the community affairs team from sanitation and our borough chiefs. I just wanted to thank you guys for being here, and also I know that there's one problem that I know that you're well aware of. I just wanted to reiterate it rather, that for a lot of our blue collar homeowners and residents, if you have to leave for work in the morning at 6:30 in the morning, and then we have a snowfall that stops before 7, those folks are almost guaranteed in a lot of situations to get a violation before they even return home from work. And I know that our chiefs and our community affairs guys, that you tend to be more understanding of things like that. But then we have enforcement people that they think that their job isn't to get compliance but to write tickets. So I just wanted to put a small spotlight onto that problem and ask for a little bit more consideration this year. I know that every year that tends to be, we get 1 or 2 of those where, somebody has to leave for work, 6 o'clock in the morning, take the railroad into Manhattan, especially for East Queens. And then by the time they get home, they're looking at a ticket. So I just wanted to point that one out.
Yeah, we could definitely speak with Chief Esposito and the enforcement folks about, we'll make sure that is heard by them, and they'll take that into consideration this year.
I appreciate it, Nick. Thanks.
Thank you. That's a great point, Mr. Marziliano. District Manager Reddick of Board 12, yes.
Good morning. I have a question. The subway, around the subway, MTA, who's really responsible? Is it sanitation or MTA? Because I have a problem with that.
That's a great question, and those jurisdictional issues always cause a lot of consternation. If you're talking about, a subway entrance that just comes up out of the street, they're supposed to clear, or they say they clear 3 feet around that. So they say. And if the adjacent property owner is doing their job and clearing a path for pedestrians, it, it should be fine. Ultimately it's between the MTA and the adjacent property owners to clear sidewalks areas adjacent to their properties. We obviously don't have the staffing or the capability to take care of every subway entrance and exit. And the MTA does say they clear those in the immediate area around it. And if the adjoining property owner is doing what they're supposed to be doing in clearing the sidewalk area, in most cases, that should, address conditions.
Because I know I always have a problem with Archer and Parson.
That's a busy roadway or busy
Yes,
intersection.
it is.
Ms. Riddick, historically, I know it's never perfect, but the underground MTA usually comes up and takes care of the south side of Archer, all of that area where all the buses line up. I know that's been historically the underground MTA.
Oh, so they're responsible.
Pretty much, I know that's the ones who always clear that sidewalk over there.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Leahy. Thank you, Ms. Riddick. District Manager Reed of Board 3. Ms. Reed, you'll want to unmute yourself.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning.
Giovanna Reed from Community Board 3. Just a question regarding open streets. Community Board 3 has one open street. It's about 26 blocks on 34th Avenue. How will that stretch be addressed?
So my understanding is that we'll be coordinating to have the barriers just removed to the sidewalk or removed to the side, and then we'll just clear it as it's scheduled on its route.
All right, there are some, not fixed, but there are some things that have remained in the street for programming purposes. Will the organizers have to remove those items?
Yes, they'll have to remove those for us to clear the street.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I think, as you know, we send all of you the snow alerts through our alert system as soon as they go out. We also share them with our agency partners so that they can further share them down the road, whether it be SBS, DOT, or whoever. So those typically go out 12 to 24 hours before snowstorm is forecast to begin. And we'll also this year be sending out an end of snow alert info due to the open dining situation. So look for that. And if anybody, did not receive and we just sent it out, the final snow plan information and some of this other snow information, let Nick know, and we'll make sure that you are on the alert list.
That's great to hear, Mr. Earhart. District Manager Giordano of Board 5.
Hi, thank you for being here, Sanitation, and for hosting them, Borough President. My concern is always the sidewalks more than the street, because Sanitation does a real good job. If it's not a slush storm, where I don't know what they did with what were expected to do with that slush that they got some bad press on. But the sidewalks over the LIE and the Jackie Robinson and places like that, and the responsibility of that is often partially what I used to call the Bureau of Highways, now Queens Street Maintenance, and Sanitation. How's that work?
So you're correct. Those areas are generally divided between DOT and Sanitation. On our part, they are addressed by the temporary snow laborers That begins after the streets are done, again, on a priority basis. And it depends upon how many temporary snow laborers we get, what kind of snow it is, how deep it is, how heavy it is. And since it's largely a manual operation, it does take time to address those. But, you know, DOT knows the ones that they're supposed to address. We know the ones that we're supposed to address. And it's really a matter of time based upon the conditions and how quickly the snow laborers can work. Chief, do you want to add anything to that?
So those overpasses are part of our pedestrian infrastructure. We do give special priority to those overpasses. We do have smaller equipment as far as the skid steers and pickup trucks. So in addition to what Henry said with the snow laborers, we do prioritize those locations as well. It doesn't happen right away. It happens as soon as our main thoroughfares and side streets are all cleared of snow. Then we could pivot to the pedestrian overpasses.
Great. Any other questions or comments? All right, wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Ciccaro and Mr. Earhart.
Comment?
Yes, of course. District Manager of Board.
I just wanted to say that my Superintendent Egger does such an excellent job and always communicates with the community board during each snowstorm. So I wanted to make sure I give a shout out to him and thank him for his help.
Thank you very much, Marie. We noted. Have a good day.
That's an important shout out. Thank you for that. So seeing as how no other questions or comments, thank you again to the department, Mr. Ciccaro, Mr. Earhart, and of course, Chiefs Azzaro and Chief Leahy. We know your time is very valuable and we're grateful to you for making some time this morning to share the plans for the coming months.
Thank you so much for having us.
You're absolutely welcome to stay, but by no means should you feel obligated. We know you have plenty to do. Up next on our agenda, we have a report on what's called the MEND program. MEND stands for Mediating Establishment and Neighborhood Disputes. Joining us this morning is a slew of folks. Ariel Palitz, Senior Executive Director, Jose Sogar, Deputy Director, Stephanie Campagna Wheaton, Intergovernmental and Community Affairs Associate of MOME, Josh Levin, Associate Commissioner of Intergovernmental Affairs. We also have some judges in the House, I see. We've got Judge Ray Kramer, Executive Director for the Center for Creative Conflict Resolution and Director of the Administrative Judicial Institute at Oath. That's a mouthful and a lot of very heavy hats. We're also joined by Judge Joni Clutter, Commissioner and Chief Administrative Law Judge for Oath. So good morning, everyone. I know that Judge Clutter actually was supposed to leave a little earlier. Thank you for graciously extending your time, but the floor is all of yours. Welcome. Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for making time for us to present today. My name is Ariel Palitz. I'm the Senior Executive Director for the Mayor's Office, or the Office of Nightlife at the Mayor's Office of Media and Entertainment. Speaking of mouthfuls. I wanted to, of course, come here today to introduce our new program that we are working in partnership with Oath, called MEND, which is a new free mediation program for resolving disputes in our neighborhoods with primarily hospitality establishments. But before I do, I wanted to take the opportunity to sort of speak a little bit about the Office of Nightlife. I haven't maybe seen some of you since the office was only first established in 2018, and I went on a 5-borough listening tour and came to Queens. And so I wanted to be able to share a little bit about what this office is and what we're doing in the time of COVID and why we established the MEND program. As I mentioned, this office is the first of its kind. The mayor created the Office of Nightlife in 2018 to ensure that the hospitality industry and the community had a dedicated office to help support the issues that we all know that this industry and community have shared together historically. Historically, the industry has not necessarily been seen as an asset, but primarily as a nuisance, whether it be regarding quality of life issues or other issues that you might think of, crowding and noise. And so it was important that this office be established to help really directly address them in a way that can be meaningful and helpful, not only to the owners, but to the community as well. And so it is really up to me as the first director of this office to set the trajectory and the priorities and the foundation of what this office is meant to be and what it can be in the future. We are a non-enforcement liaison between the industry and the community and the city itself. We help to amplify the voices of the operators, the workers, the patrons, as well as the residents, and also to be able to deliver the information that is coming from government to make sure that they have the information they need, especially in times like now. The office is really here to help establish and coordinate systemic solutions to support the nighttime economy, the culture, as well as the quality of life. And our goal is really to make nightlife more fair, safer, equitable, and accessible, and to make sure that it works for all New Yorkers. It's important to recognize that this business, this industry before the pandemic was a $35.1 billion industry for the city that supports 300,000 jobs and nearly 700 million in very needed tax revenue. Some of the ways that we were doing this and are doing this is by supporting the businesses through our interagency working group to help review and revise policies, and by establishing a MASH approach. MASH stands for Multi-Agency Support for Hospitality. In fact, our partners in Oath and also in Sanitation, who are here with us today, are on that advisory, that working group that meets every 6 weeks to help review, revise, and navigate the multi-agencies that are available, and to help the industry to navigate when issues do come up. We've also been focused on harm reduction, addressing substance use, consent awareness. We even were doing active shooter response trainings in venues as well. Pre-pandemic, we did the quality of life improvement plan in the Lower East Side, where we looked as a pilot and case study the issues around the concentrated area of quality of life issues, and noticed that the majority of the issues and complaints were coming around. Yes, there was a lot of venues there, but there was also a lot of traffic and sanitation issues because of the narrow streets and because of the sanitation schedules. So we looked at the big picture. We changed some parking regulations. We changed the sanitation pickup schedules to be more in line with the vibrancy of the area, much like a parade or a street festival where different resources are being coordinated and used to address the different conditions, rather than having daytime schedules or schedules that work for other areas. So this worked quite well and helped to improve. In regard to fairness and equity, our office has been also tapped. Many of you may know about the March operations, which is the multi-agency response for community hotspots. The Office of Nightlife has been asked by the, through legislation, through the city council, to conduct the reporting of the march operations, to know when they happen, why they happen, what happens after they happen to venues, and therefore be able to have a better sense of what these operations are about and how they work and how to improve them. And then what we also began pre-COVID was to start a pilot on mediation to help to address the high 311 calls and complaints regarding the neighborly relationships between residents and venues. Before I get to, before me and Joni, Commissioner Kletter, get into the MEND program in a little bit more detail, I just want to say that I'm extremely grateful that this office was created pre-pandemic. It helped us to, again, establish the foundation and the priorities of the office and to develop the necessary relationships with the community as well as the agencies in order to be able to handle everything that is happening now within the industry and the community. And we are really fulfilling our mandate by being the liaison and the convener that the industry needs, making sure that it has a seat at the table when discussing the reopening and recovery efforts, whether it be for outdoor seating, adjacent seating, heaters, creating documents like what to expect when you're being inspected. This is something that you can all access and distribute to the businesses in your area to help them understand and be prepared for all of the changing guidelines and enforcement that's happening. And it is a living document that you can find on our website, which we will put in into the chat. So what to expect when you're being inspected. We also created the take out, don't hang out posters that you see, it's up to you, New York, socialize responsibly posters to remind people of the guidelines. And we've conducted multiple town halls. Town calls is what we're calling them. Again, convening the multi-agencies and the industry to be able to make sure that they have the ability to speak directly to the agencies to get the information that they need. We actually have one tomorrow at noon between 12 and 1:30 p.m. And we are also bringing in not only the Department of Health, Transportation, Buildings, and Special Enforcement, but also Test and Trace Corps to help communicate to the industry to really understand what the statistics and the data looks like right now as the cases are surging, and to understand the responsibilities that businesses that rely on social gathering to survive, how can they be a player in helping to ensure that this doesn't go any further during this highly contagious virus. So with that said, I'm going to circle back to the creation of MEND and why it's important and how we're working with Oath. As many of you may know, I was also before this position, I owned a venue in the city for 10 years, and I also served on Community Board 3 on the SLA Liquor Licensing Committee for nearly 7 years in the East Village in Manhattan. And so I bring with me the person, and I also born and raised in New York and live above a bar, a loud bar. So I bring with me deep experience on conflict resolution and understanding the issues about having a vibrant nightlife and hospitality industry that sits below, residents above, and how can we resolve those issues. Historically, through the 311 anonymous call system, and even through elected officials and different organizations, people are able to complain and enforcement is dispatched. But we know that really historically, all it usually does is create more summonses and fines and enforcement and a lot of 311 calls and frustration. And very rarely does it actually resolve the issue, because mostly because of the anonymity factor, but also because there has not been a mediation platform to help people to sit face to face in a neutral environment with somebody who is not invested in the program, a professional, to listen to both sides, let people discuss what their issues are, communicate, compromise, and to be able to resolve their issues, not only for that moment, but for moving forward through established communication and contact with each other. And this is a historically proven method in courts and in divorce and other kinds of disputes. We are looking to our partners in the community boards, in the bids, the elected officials to see us as another tool in the toolbox. We know that many of you do this work as well and do your best to be able to resolve relationships, to get it out of the complaint system and to restore neighborly relationships. And so therefore, when we piloted this program and it looked like it was doing very well, and Commissioner Kletter then took over Oath, knowing also that the commissioner had her own vision, and also the Center for Creative Conflict Resolution within Oath, which is independent, essentially. They'll explain it more, and that's why they're here. I looked to Oath because I knew that the Office of Nightlife was also not seen as a neutral party. And it was important to be able to partner and to work with Oath in order to establish a citywide program that was inevitably created and launched a couple of months ago in partnership with Oath. And we have Ray and we have Joni who can speak to the numbers and to the process. And then of course, I'll be happy to answer your questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ariel. Thank you, everyone, for joining us, for allowing me to join you. And I appreciate Ariel's introduction. I think she did a great job sort of summarizing the goals of MEND and what we're trying to do. For those of you who aren't familiar with Oath, we are an independent and impartial administrative tribunal, and we adjudicate pretty much all of the summonses that are issued by the enforcement agencies in New York City. And we hold approximately 300,000 hearings a year, which we're now doing fully remote since March. But that includes summonses for sanitation, parks, consumer affairs, health, transportation, buildings, etc. So it's a massive operation. And within Oath, as Ariel mentioned, we have the Center for Creative Conflict Resolution, which was founded by Ray Kramer, who's not only an administrative law judge, but a renowned mediator. And he just put together a fantastic unit of mediators who traditionally were mediating disputes involving workplace issues and management issues among city employees. And when I was appointed commissioner of Oath in March, one of my goals was to expand the center so that we could find ways to facilitate dialogue within the community and among community members and help to mediate disputes that aren't just among city employees, but really looking at ways that we can serve the city of New York and help businesses and help residents. So for better or worse, COVID gave us this opportunity to expand the mediation work that we were doing. And one of those programs that we've launched is MEND, and you can see the mayoral press release that was put out a couple months ago in the chat that Marissa posted. And as Ariel mentioned, the goal is to assist small businesses and to help residents who have quality of life disputes regarding noise and garbage and other challenges that we're facing, particularly with COVID, with so much outdoor dining, and come up with creative solutions for those parties that allows the parties to resolve the issues in ways that may not be resolved through enforcement. And enforcement can take a long time. it doesn't always serve the parties well. It doesn't always leave people satisfied. And we think MEND is a great way to find creative solutions that will allow the parties to continue a relationship, right? Because the business isn't going anywhere, the residents aren't going anywhere, and the parties need to find ways to live together and to be productive together. So we're excited about that. We're also providing mediation for commercial landlord-tenant disputes, and we're looking at other ways to expand the work that MEND has been doing. And I want to now turn it over to Ray Kramer, who, as I mentioned, founded our program and has been doing some of these mediations, to talk a little bit more about how MEND works. Thanks.
Yeah, hi everybody, and thank you, Ariel and Joni. I think you described the program well, and we're still building it, but it really is, as Ariel said, an opportunity to bring neighbors and neighborhood businesses in connection to one another, rather than the default reaction when there are issues around crowd or noise or hours or sanitation, rather than the default reaction being to call 311 and to try and get an enforcement agency to respond, which can take a lot of time, and who knows what the outcome of that would be initially. Offering neighbors and business owners, bar, restaurant owners, a chance to talk about what's happening and to share their perspectives. And as Joni was saying, to see if there are creative ways to resolve their differences. I've been involved in 2 of these mediations so far, and in both, just to give you a sense of how it's worked, in both the bar owners, and one was a restaurant, one was a bar. The owners and the neighbors were really reasonable. They shared perspectives. Both had to do with noise and late hours. And the community residents in both cases understood the necessity for businesses to be outdoors and to survive economically, and didn't want to create pain or hardship for the owner and for the staff, the people that depend on these businesses for employment, but also wanted some peace and harmony in their home and just wanted some reasonable responses. And in both cases I was involved in, the owners were equally respectful of the residents' need for some peace and harmony. It's their home, recognizing that there can be an impact from loud noise and lots of folks out on the street at late hours. And in both cases, they were able to have a conversation and come up with some creative solutions. In one, just as an example, the bar owner agreed that the resident could text him, and he would, whenever there's noise that was excessively loud in the resident's opinion, and he would go over to the apartment and call the manager and use the decibel instrument they have to register the noise level, and have the manager turn it down. And also there was an offer to buy insulated drapes. I mean, they were just really trying to accommodate one another. I think the main point, I think Ariel was saying this, is just to put people together and create a line of communication. Remembering we're all human, we're all struggling to manage through the pandemic particularly, and to give people a chance to build a relationship as neighbors. So that's the idea. Mostly these agreements that are made in good faith. We have a terrific team of mediators at the center. We really try to make sure that there's understanding first before there's agreement. And if we manage the process well, these agreements will hold up. People will enter them in good faith. We're also, it's been an opportunity to connect with several New York City law school mediation clinics. So we have mediation clinic professors and their trained student mediators assisting us with these cases. So it's been a nice opportunity to broaden the pool of mediators. But that's a little bit about the program. It's Ariel pioneered this, but it is a place, neighborhood disputes, where mediation makes a lot of sense. And there's no downside. If it doesn't work, if after a conversation things continue, there's always the enforcement mechanism available. We try to do these mediations as quickly as possible. As soon as we get the parties engaged, we try to have them, we're doing them virtually, of course, but we had try to have them in the mediation within 2 weeks. So we're not delaying, we're just giving people an opportunity to talk it through themselves, and they don't lose anything by trying. I think that's all I want to say for the moment. Happy to answer questions, but thank you for having us.
Great, thank you for that presentation. I see that we have some questions. I am going to ask again the remaining members of our cabinet to kindly turn your cameras on. We would like to see you. District Manager Coloris of Board 1.
Good morning. My name is Florence Cloris. I'm the District Manager of Community Board 1. We have 4 restaurant rows and 1 very heavy nightlife area. When this organization was created, the first meeting was done at Frank Sinatra School the night of our community board. I've tried to reach out. I've never had any reach out returned back from the nightlife institution. I really don't understand why we are boots on the ground day in and day out. We get the phone calls, we get the complaints, we deal with the situations, we know our community, we know our residents, we know our restaurant owners. Why are you making other partnerships and we weren't the first reach out? We were not your first resource. We have, between all of us, hundreds of years of experience with this. We've been advocating, working with the restaurants. We've been doing the mediation ourselves in many aspects, and it has worked very, very well, doing lots of the techniques that you are using. Why didn't you reach out to us as partners and talk to us? I don't understand that.
Thank you for your question. And actually, I can understand the perception that perhaps that we have not been regularly in touch with the community boards, the borough cabinet meetings, and the community. But historically, we have traveled through these meetings often. There are 59, I believe, community boards. And my office, just so you know, it's me plus 3 people in our office. And within the first, year or so, we've really just been establishing this office, as I had mentioned, laying down the foundation and really establishing the relationships gradually. The last 8 months of the 2 years plus months has been within this pandemic, and it's been obviously a heavy load for us all. We are doing our best to be able to get to everyone systematically, and I will of course check our records, but I do believe that we've had contact in more than one way, whether it be through our newsletters or through emails, with the majority of the community boards to the best of our ability. And we have had conversations about the benefit of a mediation program. Needless to say, I'm here today to be in touch with you and to build that bridge, and am happy to continue regular communication and as needed to continue to build, not only through this MEND program, but everything that needs to be done moving forward.
The community board office is the mediation program. They call us, we work with the owners, we work with the residents. We are the mediation program. We are the boots on the ground. We are 3 people in an office too. Again, you have hundreds of years of experience sitting at this table right now.
Yes,
and
this is not.
We're the ones who always get the complaints. We're the ones who hear it first.
I am aware.
To me, what you're saying doesn't make any sense. I mean, you're saying a lot of nice words, but it's not logical. It's not logical at all.
I understand.
Not logical.
I hear what you're saying, and I don't want this to be perceived as a program that is fulfilling something that is not happening on the ground. It's meant to be another tool in the toolbox. We work with community boards, we work with elected officials, council members, assembly members. We also mine through the 311 call system that where people are not necessarily reaching out to community boards. Obviously, there is a bandwidth issue also for you. As you mentioned, there's only 3 people in your offices.
No, we're fine. We handle our district. Our district is fully.
That's fine. And this is an optional resource for you to be able to utilize. And we have, I think, nearly over 100 cases that have come in over the last 2 months that this program has been established, and we've had success. And if you feel as though this is a program that is not necessarily of use, listen, all of the NCO officers in every precinct in New York also took mediation courses and became mediators through the New York Peace Institute. I also became certified mediator through that institute. Joni has become a certified mediator. Judge Ray is a mediator. We're all in this together. This is not meant to be something that is competitive or to replace anyone. We know that the quality of life issues is and has been number one regarding hospitality for decades. And I would, you know, I don't think it would be unfair to say that issue has not been resolved. And it's a complicated one. And this is simply meant to be an additional tool for you and for everyone on this call. If there's something that has been chronic for years, and we know that there are chronic issues, that there has been no resolution, we ask that you consider this resource to help. That's all.
Yeah, I just want to add, Florence, I just want to reiterate, I think Ariel said it perfectly, but this isn't about stepping on anybody's toes or preventing you from doing the work that you're doing. It's another tool in the toolbox. So we're here to help everybody.
I hear you. But may I say this, chronic issues occur because the lifeline of a restaurant, the average lifeline of a restaurant is approximately 2 years. If a business doesn't survive within 2 years, they leave. So what happens is you constantly have new businesses coming into our districts. As they come in, sometimes, not all the time, sometimes you have a few that end up being a problem. The ones that end up being a problem are dealt with through the NCO program, through the NCO mediation, through the community boards, and the kind of help that we need, we don't get when they are where they shouldn't be and doing what they shouldn't do. But that isn't the common problem. That isn't the common problem. The problem with flipping over of ownership is where you will see.
We're not here to, yeah, and look, we're not trying to solve every problem. We're certainly not about, this MEN program isn't going to solve every problem. We're really here to offer a very unique version of mediation for quality of life disputes between businesses and residents, and landlord-tenant disputes that some landlords need assistance with. So we're not trying to be the, this like take over all mediation and litigation that's happening.
Thank you for that. And so I'm hearing, with the small businesses in particular, and we just saw that in the prior presentation, pre-pandemic, it's hard enough as it is, but our businesses are approaching, if not already, an endangered status. And so I hear you, District Manager Coloris, but I'm also hearing that the MEN program and all these options are not replacing nor superseding the mediation role that our community boards that serve as kind of a first line serve. And I think some of what I'm also hearing a little bit of the frustration is that while our community boards are well equipped, there is no shortage of need for more resources. And when we see the resources going into new entities, as opposed to being invested into, say, the community boards to augment existing options, that could be seen as
Yeah,
a
there were no resources that actually went into this. We used existing resources.
existing resources of the office. Okay,
Yep.
well, that's good to know. That's good to know. And on that note, and I see Mr. Marziliano, but just real quick, so as an option, right, as an option that does not replace nor supersede what the community boards offer for mediation, and it is an option that I suppose also is good to help break through impasses, right, that you're alluding to. So, but considering that the option is, a lot of it is done in good faith, is there an element that, like, what are the incentives for parties to utilize the MEND program, right? I think for community boards, it is an attractive option. It's kind of an inherent incentivized option for different parties to engage, because a lot of them need to go to the community board at some point. What is that sort of inherent incentive for parties to exercise this additional option, such as the MEND program, which is a very valuable option? But what are the incentives that parties have?
I would say that the incentives is having peace in your home and having a peaceful relationship with your neighbor and resolving issues that might have been going on for a while. And whereas the community board is a great option to be able to go to, very often it's possible that both parties might not feel as though it is the neutral ground that they need to be able to resolve an issue. And that is why mediation offers, similarly in divorce cases or child custody or any other type of dispute, where you can have a neutral party who is trained on compromise and communication. And I think it provides a place of trust. It's confidential. The information can't be shared. And that could be shared with the community board or with the mayor's office or with the police or the state liquor authority as they see fit. And this is about taking out the enforcement aspect of relationship rebuilding and mending and allowing it to just be about neighbors. And I think that's a good incentive. And I think it's, again, another tool that can be used. When venues go in front of the community board, if there has been a history of chronic complaint, maybe they're getting their renewal, to be able to stand up in front of the community board, perhaps even with that neighbor, and say, it was months or years of hell, but we resolved this now. And to be able to use that again as another tool in that process. I do want to just, while I have the floor, say that this is not meant to negotiate out of stipulations that people come into at the board. This is not meant to say, well, I know we're supposed to close at 2, but if you agree we can close at 3 and I'll do this, then we won't call against you. This is not meant to circumvent the existing agreements. I think one of the benefits that the community boards have in referring cases is to be able to be a partner with the case builders to provide the stipulations and to provide the background and to be able to allow for the neutral mediators to understand the bigger picture.
I think the neutrality, or at least the perception thereof, is absolutely critical. District Manager Marziliano of Ward 11, followed by District Manager Markell of Ward 2.
Hi, thank you so much for being here. I have a specific question about whether or not you can speak more in detail about what your role is when it comes to march operations, because that, I gotta be honest, that's very specifically, that's a very high concern to myself and the other district managers. As you know, really the only point of leverage when it comes to our nightlife operators is their liquor licenses. And as you know, as the way that the state law is written, you know, we basically have, when it's a 500-foot case, it's just one of the few things where the community board actually gets a say-so. So if you could speak a little bit more as to the march operations, I'd appreciate it.
Sure, I'm happy to answer that question. The Office of Nightlife has zero role in the march operations. We are a non-enforcement liaison between the city and the city agencies. The legislation that requires there be a central reporting office, because the march operations, as you know, are multi-agency. And historically, there's been no central reporting process. And so lots of people have a lot of feelings about March on all sides, but nobody has any data or facts to really base it on as far as when they're happening, how they're happening, what triggers a march, that whole process. And so on the hospitality and cultural community side, especially when it issues around disproportionate enforcement regard to race or to borough, there have been a lot of discussion about proportionate enforcement, and also about the, again, the way that it happens and why it happens and what happens when it happens. And so there was a hearing at City Council, and it was established that there would be a central reporting agency to be able to provide the data, the facts. They didn't want it to come out of NYPD or out of DOB or out of any of the enforcement agencies itself, but again, a neutral, non-enforcement entity. Because the Office of Nightlife has already established very strong interagency relationships through our interagency working group, we already have all of those enforcement entities at the table with us every 6 weeks, discussing the inner workings of the agencies and how they relate to the industry. And so we had already established that trust. That is something that the police and all of the agencies give to the Office of Nightlife, the data. It is biannual. We released the first report, which is available on our website, on September 6th. As you might imagine, there were no marches since March. And so we're not really seeing a holistic picture or an accurate picture, but the intent and our role is simply to report the data, and we have no other role. I will mention, though, that as part of that legislation, part of one of the complaints of a lot of venues was that there was not notice being given on march operations. And so when it is not a life-threatening or life-threatening situation, they are given a 30-day notice that they are on a march list and are given an opportunity to improve those conditions.
Right, thank you.
I have just a small response there, and it doesn't just come from, obviously right now I happen to be the district manager of Board 11 in Bayside, Douglaston, and Little Neck. But the majority of the other people in this room happen to know that at one point in the very recent past that I was their health department rep for the borough of Queens. And I have to tell you that if the point of compiling this information is to say whether or not neighborhoods of color are getting a disproportionate amount of enforcement, I would just have to say that the way in which relationships between enforcement agencies, from my perspective with my colleagues in this room, were grown, or by making sure that when enforcement is asked, whether it's on Jamaica Avenue or whether it's on 82nd Street in Jackson Heights, that if you don't show up, then you're not giving those neighborhoods access to law enforcement and code enforcement when they're desperately asking for it. So, if those numbers are being used downtown at City Hall for political purposes, Those numbers might be looking one way, but in fact, there's a reason why. There's a real reason why those numbers might look one way, but in fact, they may in fact be needed. So I just needed to say that for my colleagues here.
I just want to address that issue, and just to clarify that this is not meant to be a political tool at all, based to try to determine anything. This is simply meant to be a data collection tool. This is not about descending into a conversation about the race issue in enforcement. This was pre-pandemic. This is something that has been on the minds regarding the March operations for many years. And it was one of the multitudes of issues that the advocates brought to City Council to create a data report that is meant to show the whole picture.
Right. I understand that the agency is not adding a sort of an opinion piece to that. I just wanted to say that on the record, that's very important if that's in fact the reason why the information is being compiled. And I understand that you guys are you're non-political civil servants. I totally understand that, and I accept that, and I thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, Mr. Marziliano, because intent is one thing, but effect is another. So thank you for bringing that up. I see District Manager Markell of Board 2, followed by District Manager Adam Ovide of Board 8, followed by Ms. Reddick, District Manager Ms. Reddick of Board 12.
Thank you, Madam Borough President. I have two questions. Joe, I'm going to piggyback just on you for a statement before I make my other question, which sort of piggybacks off of District Manager Claus. I worked for the mayor's office for 8 years in the community assistance unit. We did the March programs. They were fair and equitable, and this will lead me into my question, actually. They were fair and equitable, and a lot of those March programs were initiated by lists from the community boards from complaints that they received, and in the nightlife and establishments that bars and establishments were not adhering to code and to rules and regulations. So I hope that you are doing a fair and equitable job and including, and my question actually was, which is why I raised my hand, is why not engage the community boards when you have clients in your area? We are, as Board 1 just noted, we are the first line of defense, and I know my colleagues would agree. And we do know the establishments. We have very active committees that do stipulations, especially in our board, that the State Liquor Authority does respect and note. So why not include us rather than exclude us, is my question.
I don't think this is an exclusion issue, nor an inclusion issue. This is a standalone program that is meant to provide mediation resources for businesses and neighbors. And the way to be included is to be able to utilize this resource when there are issues around quality of life, and to reach out to us as well. This program has been stood up for about 2 months, and we have heard from many community boards and have had successful relationships in coming to successful mediations. And so I would hate for anyone to think that this is a question of exclusion. We're here today to bring you in.
Thank you. I appreciate that. But we do active stipulations, as you are aware of, and we do know, and we need to know if an establishment is not adhering to them as well, because they do come back for renewals, and we need to know if there are issues and compliance and things that we should be aware of on the mediation, because maybe we can help as well. So I think it should be a hand-holding two-way street. So thank you.
Thank you for that.
District Manager Adam Ovide, Board Aide.
I think I'm on the same wavelength. You meet every 6 weeks and you want to include us, send us an invite. I would love to join that meeting and really hear for myself what you guys are doing and participate.
Thank you. This particular meeting is for city agencies within the administration. This is not an open meeting. We're able to have meetings of that nature, and this is something that we do on Zoom. We've been doing it for 2.5 years since the first day that this office was created and went on a 5-borough listening tour. We do hold many, many meetings that there's multifaceted participation, but the enforcement agencies that interact with the industry is just a working group that we have. It's not a public meeting.
Ma'am, we are a city agencies. We're not a civic association.
No, I understand that, but this is a particular working group that we created for very specific purpose. We do communicate regularly. We're here today. We're happy to communicate with you in any invitation that is handed over to us that is feasible. But we can take it into consideration, but I have a feeling that this is something that is reserved for a specific purpose.
Okay, well, it does appear that we're being excluded.
You're not. We're here today. And we're here to be partners with you. And I really just don't want the perception of what we're doing and what you're doing to be adversarial. We are really genuinely here to work together. We've been here discussing all the ways in which that we can do that. There are some ways we can, and there are some ways we can't. I would not be standing at the community boards every day and going through your process. There's a process that you have meetings that you have board members and meetings that you have, and we all have our ways of operating in order to be productive. And this is a very big city. There are 59 community boards, and we're trying to be able to come to the cabinet meetings where everyone is assembled and to be orderly and to be productive. And this is not meant to be excluding, including, resisting anything or anyone. We're trying to find ways, especially now in this pandemic, to be productive and helpful and useful to each other.
Well, I don't think including the community board district managers will prevent you from being orderly or from getting the work done. If anything, we will contribute to it, not take anything away from it. We're not adversarial. We're there to help. We're here advocating for our communities, and we're there to help in any way we can. And being in the loop is very important to us in our communities, because ultimately the goal is to make sure that our neighbors, our businesses are doing well and they're getting along. I would like you to reconsider. I'm not sure who makes that decision, but I think my colleagues will probably join me in writing a letter requesting access. Thank you.
Well, I'm happy to reconsider. What I think would be a better idea and something we can brainstorm is to have a dedicated meeting similarly to the ones that happen with other organizations, like bids that happen. And therefore, I think that we are able to create something, but I'm sure we can find a solution. I do have an 11 o'clock call that I'm late for, so if we could wrap up, I'd appreciate it.
And Ms. Pallets, this goes back to what earlier about intent and effect. Certainly the exclusion is clearly not your intent, but it sounds like it is an effect. We're very grateful that you're here with us for over 90 minutes at our cabinet. But are there other ways in which there is a demonstration of inclusion for us or of us?
First of all, absolutely. Everyone is, first of all, on our newsletter and should be receiving information on a regular basis regarding our movements and our town halls and our town calls. Like I said, we have another one tomorrow with multi-agencies to be able to extend information to the industry regarding COVID and all of the new guidelines. And I think it would be quite important to have partnership with the community boards to make sure that especially the venues that maybe are struggling are participating in these meetings. And of course, you're all welcome to reach out to this office anytime with any concerns. I'll put my email address into the chat room. And I really encourage everyone to consider the MEND program as a tool and a partner and ways that we can work together.
And before you go, I know that District Manager Reddick of Board 12 had a question, but I see that she may have
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I have to jump as well. I just want to thank everybody for having us.
Certainly. Ms. Reddick had a question, but as soon as she comes back on the screen, we'll give her the floor.
So I'm going to have, I think Marissa will stay on. Yeah, thank you.
District Manager Marziliana, did you have a follow-up question? I thought I saw a hand. You're good. Okay. I see District Manager Coloris.
I find it ironic that you would reach out, you said, and include the bids in some inclusive way, but you didn't reach out to the community boards and speak with the community boards. When this organization first formed, I asked to have a seat, and because I have one of the business districts and nightlife districts that is biggest outside of Manhattan with the most unenclosed cafes, I asked to participate. Even back then I was denied.
Who did you ask?
The night that you came into our district and did the presentation, I notified your group that it was the night of my full board meeting, and you didn't even reach out to our office 2.5 years ago until the day the event was occurring. So I definitely have a genuine feeling that, again, you have hundreds of years of experience here that you are not tapping into. And we also have needs in each and every one of our own districts for information of what's occurring, because we have our fingers on the pulse. We meet with these entities, we bring them into our offices, we sit down at the table, we mediate, we negotiate, we have stipulations, we converse, we call them personally, we let them know what their issues are with the neighbors. And now there are conversations that are going on that we are not privy to.
And Ms. Pallets, before you address that, I just want to give the floor to District Manager Reddick of Board 12. Ms. Reddick, forgive us for the wait. Ms. Reddick, you're going to want to unmute.
So I'm going to have to I'll jump in here for a minute and just say that we're not having meetings excluding anyone. The bid meetings have their own meetings and we're invited, and they are organized in their own way and have addressed other city agencies, and we've come by invitation. I have not created any sub-bid meeting that I've not done the same for with you, and I've not created that. That was something I was invited to. And so I just really want to be able to leave this meeting with some sense that this is the intent is to establish and continue to reestablish partnership and communication and cooperation with each other. This is essential to the survival of our city. It is important that we figure out a way to try to work better together. It has been enormously challenging to create a brand new office from scratch, which is what this office is. It's not something that has been around for decades. being new to government, coming from the community, coming from the industry, and I'm bringing my experience and the relationships and doing everything within my power to create an opportunity for better government and for better relationships and for a better industry and better community within my power. It doesn't negate all of the incredible and important work that each community board does. I sat on a community board for nearly 7 years. I know the work, I know the sacrifice, I know how the hours, and I know the challenge. And that's what I'm trying to be able to bridge here. And so it's the best that I can do. I'm doing my best. I ask for the opportunity to be able to move forward so that we can help to restore and recover our city as best as we can, and to know that I'm coming from a good place and not trying to exclude anyone.
Thank you. Ms. Reddick, if you can try to unmute yourself, or Borough Hall team, if we can unmute Ms. Reddick's window, please.
I'm late for a call.
There we go.
Okay.
Yes, loud and clear.
I would like to know if the community affairs officers from the precincts are part of that team, I would say.
No,
They're not.
the NYPD is. The NYPD has representation, but not community affairs. This particular meeting, listen, we have tons of meetings and tons of ways of communicating. I brought up the multi-agency working group that I have to demonstrate the common ground that I'm trying to create in different areas to have communication to resolve systemic issues within the way that the agencies work with each other. Right? This particular group is about interagency workings on how the fire department works with the police department, works with the buildings department, and to try to create some sort of pathway where there's not duplication or obstruction, and so that it works better and that there's more communication within those agencies regarding this issue. It is not regarding community-based issues, it's regarding enforcement issues and how they interact with each other. And that's why that particular meeting is not necessarily the right place, but there are other ways and other opportunities for us to continue the conversation.
Excuse me, but as district manager, we work with those agencies also.
And you can have a meeting with them. I mean, there's no reason why there should not be communication interagency with all of the community boards and the agencies.
Well, why not communicate with us?
I am
sorry
here
to speak out of turn, but why not communicate with, I mean, yes, you are here today, but you're here to get information rather than share and be a part of our communities. And we are here to talk with you to say that we're willing to partner and work together. So it should be a collaborative effort.
I'm looking forward to that.
Perhaps
Right.
perhaps we should consider utilizing the MEND program for this conversation.
Listen, I'm here for that purpose. I'm not here this is a two-way street. I am going through all the boroughs, all the district managers, having a conversation. We are here to work together. If that's what you want, that's what I want. I feel like we can get there.
Okay. So
I thank you very much for having me. Unfortunately, I have gone a bit over time and I have another call that I have to wait, that is waiting for me. I ask for an opportunity to mend this relationship and to find ways to continue to work together, and happy to get recommendations on how we can do that, and we will find a way. I have no doubt.
And we appreciate that, Ms. Pallets, and you know, I will resurrect what was said earlier as a reminder that the community boards are a city agency, albeit non-mayoral. And so the meeting that you mentioned with the bids, which sounds like a great platform, but the bids are not city agencies.
Thank you.
So just wanted to put that out there. But I'm sure there are ways. We look forward to working with you on ways to be more inclusive of the community boards, the city agencies that are community boards. And thank you so much for your time. And thank you for all that you're doing.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And thank you for the opportunity. Let's try and find a way to make it work. I'm here to do that.
All right. Thank you. Have a wonderful day.
You too.
With that concludes the agenda items for today's cabinet. We know that it's been a long one. We appreciate your time. I know that we want to have some conversations, but at this point, I will close the meeting and we will certainly follow up offline. The next meeting of the Queens Borough Cabinet will be Tuesday, December 15, 1-5 at 9:30 a.m., very likely on Zoom. Thank you.